The only sound in a professional kitchen at 11 at night should be the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft click of a locking door. Instead, I was still there, fingers moving methodically as I tied satin ribbons around 30 small bags of handmade cookies. In exactly 9 hours, my son Zachary would turn 9, and I had promised him this year would be different. No last-minute catering disasters, no frantic phone calls, no just one quick favor. Just cake, laughter, and me fully present. My phone suddenly lit up on the stainless steel counter, the glow harsh against the polished metal. It was a text from my mother, Susan. I canceled the party. Michelle needs you to cater her networking brunch tomorrow. It's good exposure. Don't be selfish. I stood there, staring at the words. The blue light reflected along the blade of my chef's knife like a cold warning. 3 seconds later, another message arrived. Michelle loved to cancel the party. I didn't respond. I didn't draft a long explanation about boundaries or broken promises. I didn't call to defend my son's birthday. Something colder than anger settled inside me. It felt like a silent switch being flipped, clean and final. Not rage, not hurt, just the quiet termination of a contract that had been draining me for years. I set the phone down carefully, as if it were something fragile. Then I picked up my knife roll and began to pack. I'm reading this at midnight, wondering if anyone else has a family that treats their time like a free vending machine. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and tell me, would you have replied or would you have done exactly what I did? I moved through the kitchen with the precision of a line cook in the middle of a Saturday dinner rush. Efficient, focused, no hesitation. I boxed up my industrial stand mixer, wrapped each of my Japanese steel knives in their cloth sleeves, and loaded the 50 pounds of premium chocolate I had painstakingly tempered for tomorrow. I cleared the counters, emptied the shelves, and dismantled the heartbeat of that kitchen piece by piece. My parents owned the property, but the skill, the systems, the sweat that made it profitable were mine. Without me, it was just stainless steel and silence. I drove home and gently woke Zachary. It was close to 1 in the morning. "Hey, buddy, wake up. We're going on a secret mission." He blinked up at me, confused but trusting, the way children do when they know their parent is their safe place. "Where to?" he mumbled. "To a new fortress," I told him. I packed his clothes, his sneakers, and the Lego sets I'd bought for his birthday into the van. I left my house key beneath the welcome mat. I didn't leave a note. Notes are for misunderstandings. There was no misunderstanding here. I knew exactly who they were. We drove across town to the warehouse district, where the city smelled like flour and diesel instead of perfume and pretense. Larry, my former mentor, owned an industrial bakery there. Years ago, he'd given me the code to the upstairs loft, joking that every chef needs a ghost kitchen escape plan. The air inside carried the tang of sourdough starter and the faint bitterness of caramelized sugar. It smelled like hard work, but it also smelled like refuge. Zachary curled up on a thin mattress on the floor and drifted back to sleep within minutes. I sat near the window, watching the streetlights flicker against the concrete, and opened my laptop. For 3 years, I had been keeping a spreadsheet. I'd labeled it Family Tax, half as a joke. Every brunch Michelle needed for her friends, every last-minute appetizer spread, every holiday dinner for 20 people that I shopped for, prepped alone, cooked, and cleaned up afterward while they toasted themselves with wine. The total at the bottom of the column read $12,500, and that was just the past 12 months. I stared at the number, my reflection faint in the dark screen. For years, I had convinced myself this was simply what families did. You help, you contribute, you don't count the cost. But under the cold glow of that monitor, the truth felt undeniable. I wasn't a daughter, I was infrastructure. There's a saying about boiling a frog slowly so it never notices the temperature rising. That was my life. It started with, "Can you bake a few cupcakes?" It evolved into full-scale catered events with no invoice attached. I had mistaken endurance for love. I thought that if I proved myself indispensable enough, I would finally be cherished. But utilities are not cherished. They are consumed, they are relied upon until they malfunction, and then they are replaced. I wasn't valuable because they loved me. I was valuable because I was free. I glanced over at Zachary sleeping peacefully. He was about to turn 9, and his grandmother had been willing to erase his birthday for a networking opportunity. That was the boiling point. That was when the water spilled over. I shut the laptop. I didn't block their numbers, not yet. I wanted to witness it. I wanted to see the precise second they discovered that the refrigerator light was glowing, but the shelves were empty. At 7 a.m., sunlight streamed across the concrete floor of the warehouse loft. It was the quietest morning I had experienced in a decade. Normally, by that hour, I would already be 3 hours deep in prep, hands smelling of onions and citrus zest, shoulders tight with pressure. Today, I smelled cheap coffee heating on a single burner and the faint, dusty sweetness of flour drifting up from below. I picked up my phone. It was dead. I plugged it into the charger and watched as the screen flickered back to life. The instant it connected to the network, it vibrated violently against the metal table. 53 missed calls, 87 text messages. I scrolled slowly, scanning for something specific. "Are you okay? Is Zachary safe?" Those messages didn't exist. Instead, "Where are you? Guests arrive in an hour. This isn't funny. Answer your phone. You're destroying my brand. Mom is crying. You're jealous and selfish. Fix this immediately." I read them calmly, almost clinically. They still believed I was late. They thought this was a delay in service, not the termination of labor. I didn't respond. I poured myself coffee and handed Zachary a glass of juice. We sat cross-legged on the floor playing cards while the phone buzzed uselessly against the table leg like an insect trapped under glass. By 10 a.m., the tone shifted from fury to fear. The brunch had begun. I logged into Instagram using a burner account I kept for market research. Michelle was live. The video shook slightly as she walked through my parents' dining room, the space she liked to call her studio. Behind her was chaos. Instead of my hand-rolled puff pastry tartlets and artisan smoked salmon displays, there were flimsy supermarket trays, cubes of sweating cheddar, slices of rubbery ham, a plastic tub of generic potato salad with the lid askew. It looked like a forgotten office potluck, not a curated networking event. Her guests, immaculate and camera-ready, filmed the spread with thinly veiled confusion, zooming in on bright orange price stickers still clinging to the lids. Michelle didn't apologize.
She didn't accept responsibility. She widened her eyes and turned up the ring light. Then she did the one thing that sealed her fate with me forever. She shifted into her vulnerable persona, the one she used to charm sponsors. A tear formed on cue. "I am so sorry, everyone," she whispered dramatically. "My sister was supposed to be the chef today, but she's having a mental health crisis." I went completely still. My grip tightened around my mug until my knuckles blanched. "She had a complete breakdown last night," Michelle continued, dabbing at her cheek. "She took off with her son. We're really concerned. She's been unstable for a while, and honestly, we're worried she might be dangerous. Please pray for our family. I'm just trying to hold everything together." The comments flooded in. "So brave! Sending love. I hope she gets help. Is the child safe?" She wasn't simply deflecting blame. She was torching my reputation to shield her embarrassment. In our city's close-knit culinary scene, rumors travel faster than invoices. Being labeled unstable could end contracts overnight. No one hires a caterer they think might vanish mid-event. No one trusts a chef rumored to be dangerous. She was willing to jeopardize my career and possibly my custody just to avoid admitting she served discount cheese cubes. I watched until the stream ended. Heat climbed my neck, sharp and bright. Then I looked at Zachary, fully absorbed in building a card tower, safe and calm. I didn't yell, I didn't throw anything. I felt the temperature inside me drop sharply. Anger is fire. It consumes quickly and fades. This wasn't fire. It was ice, deliberate and enduring. She wanted a story about a breakdown. Fine, I would give her a story, but it would not be hers. I opened my laptop again. I was no longer operating as a sister or daughter. I was operating as a business owner, as a creditor, and the bill was due. I sat at the metal table, laptop glow catching dust particles in the air. Zachary hummed softly as he fortified his cardboard fortress. He was safe. My name, however, was under attack. Michelle's audience was rallying around her carefully constructed narrative. I inhaled slowly, counted to 4, and exhaled. Then I opened my invoicing software. For years, my payment had been guilt and obligation. That ended now. I created a new client profile, Michelle Events LLC. I entered the dates of service. Item 1, catering services, multiple dates, $12,500. Item 2, rush cancellation fee, failure to provide venue access per standard contract terms, $1,500. Item 3, ingredient reimbursement, $850. Total due, $14,850. I sent the invoice not to her personal address, but to her business email, copying our parents, the silent partners in her operation. Then I opened another tab and emailed Sarah, an old culinary school friend turned formidable hospitality attorney. Subject, defamation/cease and desist. My sister is publicly claiming I am mentally unstable to cover her own health code violations. I require immediate retraction and damages. I pressed send. My hands moved quickly now, steady and precise. The final call was the hardest and the most necessary. I dialed the county health department. I knew the inspector well. He had awarded my kitchen an A rating for 5 consecutive years. Hi Dave, it's Grace. I'm calling to put on record that I am not the caterer of record for the event at 42 Oak Street today. I terminated the contract last night. Any food served there was not prepared by me, nor under my supervision. Understood, Grace, Dave said, his voice serious. We had a complaint about temperature control on some potato salad. Anyway, we're sending someone out. I hung up. I looked at the phone. It was silent now. I had turned off notifications, but I could see the outgoing messages. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was business. Michelle wanted to play the professional victim. Fine, I would treat her like a professional liability. I didn't feel guilty. Guilt is for people who do something wrong. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a ledger finally balancing out. I walked over to Zachary. Hey, Fortress Commander, how about we go get some real food? I know a bakery downstairs that has the best croissants in the city. He grinned. Do they have chocolate? They have everything, I said. We walked downstairs, leaving the laptop open, the invoice sent, and the legal machinery grinding into gear. I didn't look back. 3 days passed in the quiet rhythm of the warehouse. I helped Larry with the morning bread bake. The repetitive motion of kneading dough soothed the jagged edges of my nerves. My parents had tried to call, blocked numbers mostly, but the cease and desist letter Sarah sent had clearly landed. The public smearing had stopped abruptly. Then, on Wednesday afternoon, my email pinged with a message that changed everything from a skirmish into a war. It was from a contact at a mid-sized publishing house, a woman named Elena who I had catered a launch party for 2 years ago. Subject, quick question, the curated table. Hi Grace, I hope you're well. I'm reviewing the final proofs from Michelle's cookbook, The Curated Table, and I was a little confused. The manuscript notes say these are her original family recipes, but I recognized this smoked duck with cherry gastrique. Isn't that the signature dish you made for my wedding? Just wanted to clarify credits before we go to print. I stared at the screen. The air left my lungs. A cookbook. Michelle couldn't boil water without watching a YouTube tutorial. She treated her oven like extra storage for sweaters. I replied immediately. Can you send me the PDF? Elena sent it. I opened the file. It was my life's work. There, in high-resolution glossy photos, were my recipes, my puff pastry, my 48-hour bone broth, my grandmother's secret mole sauce that I had spent 6 months perfecting. She hadn't just copied them, she had copy-pasted them from the shared family cloud drive I used to store my notes. She hadn't even changed the headnotes. I developed this recipe on a rainy Tuesday when Zachary was sick, one paragraph read. Michelle didn't have a son named Zachary. She didn't have a son at all. She had stolen my memories along with my ingredients. I scrolled to the bottom of the press release attached to the file. Join us this Saturday for an exclusive investor gala and live cooking demonstration. Buy-in starts at $75,000. Witness the culinary genius of Michelle as she prepares a 5-course tasting menu from the book live on stage. $75,000. She was soliciting investors for a lifestyle brand based entirely on intellectual property she had stolen from the sister she called unstable. My first instinct was to call Elena and scream fraud, to shut it down right now. But then I looked at the date of the event. Saturday, 3 days away. A live cooking demonstration. The menu listed sole meuniere and chocolate soufflé. These weren't dump and stir recipes.
These required technique, temperature control, emulsification, timing. You couldn't fake a soufflé. You couldn't charm your way through a broken sauce. If I stopped the book now, she would spin it. She would say I was jealous, that it was sabotage. She would play the victim again. But if she stood on a stage in front of investors who had written checks for $75 grand and tried to cook my food, there wouldn't be anywhere to hide. I closed the PDF. I emailed Elena back. Thanks for sending, Elena. I'll handle this directly. I didn't tell her to stop the press. I sat back in my chair. The smell of yeast was strong in the air. Michelle wanted to be the star. She wanted the spotlight. I was going to let her have it. I was going to give her the brightest, hottest spotlight she had ever seen, and I was going to watch her melt under it. The venue for the investor gala was a converted art gallery in the city center. Industrial chic, exposed brick, and enough lighting equipment to simulate a supernova. I arrived at 7:30. I didn't go through the front door where the investors were sipping champagne. I went to the loading dock. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Michelle. Where are you? The induction burner isn't working and the sauce broke. Mom is crying in the bathroom. I will pay you double. I will pay you triple. Please save us. I walked into the prep kitchen. It was a scene of absolute carnage. The floor was slick with oil. A tray of burnt puff pastry sat on a cooling rack looking like charcoal briquettes. And there was Michelle, wearing a pristine white chef's coat that still had the creases from the packaging, frantically whisking a bowl of gray liquid that was supposed to be a beurre blanc. She looked up. Her mascara was running. When she saw me, her face collapsed into relief. Oh, thank God, she breathed. She practically threw the whisk into the sink. You're here. I knew you wouldn't do this to me. I knew you wouldn't let me fail. She tried to hand me her apron. Fix the sauce. I have to go out and do the intro speech. Just plate the first course in 10 minutes. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize for the smear campaign. She just assumed that, like always, I would step in and clean up the mess, because that's what the help does. I didn't take the apron. I let it fall to the floor. No, I said. Michelle froze. What? I'm not here to cook, Michelle. I'm here to clarify the menu. I walked past her. I pushed through the swinging doors into the dining room. The hum of conversation died down as I entered. 60 high-net-worth individuals turned to look at me. My parents were at the head table. My father stood up, looking furious. My mother looked like she was about to faint. I walked straight to the lead investor, a man named Mr. Sterling, who I knew appreciated due diligence. I placed a manila folder on his table. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice calm and carrying clearly in the silent room. Inside that folder, you will find the original creation logs for every recipe in tonight's cookbook. You will see timestamps dating back 3 years, originating from my cloud drive. I looked back at Michelle, who was standing in the kitchen doorway, pale as a sheet.
"The person in the kitchen cannot cook this menu because she didn't write it," I said, "and the sauce is broken because she tried to add cold butter to hot vinegar without an emulsifier. Enjoy your evening." I didn't wait for the explosion. I turned around and walked out the front door. I heard my mother scream my name, but it sounded far away, like a noise from a television in another room. The collapse wasn't slow. It was instant. Mr. Sterling pulled his $75,000 before the valet even brought his car around. The other investors followed. The publishing house canceled the book deal the next morning for breach of contract and intellectual property theft. 2 days later, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later, sitting on the balcony of a warehouse with a glass of cheap wine. "You've destroyed us," he said. His voice sounded old. "We put everything into Michelle's brand, our retirement accounts, the equity in the house. It's all gone. I hope you're happy." I sat there looking at the city skyline and I realized something profound. I hadn't destroyed them. I had just stopped propping them up. For years, I thought Michelle was the golden child, the one with the shine, the charisma, the success. I thought I was just the support beam. But looking at the wreckage of their finances, I finally understood the math. Michelle was an empty wallet. She had the logo, the stitching, and the expensive leather, but there was no currency inside. I was the currency. I was the labor, the talent, and the grit. When I removed myself, the wallet didn't just become thin, it became worthless. My parents hadn't invested in a business, they had invested in a mirage. And when the wind blew the sand away, they blamed the wind instead of their own lack of vision. My phone rang again. My mother this time. I looked at the screen. For a second, I felt that old pull, the invisible chain that yanks you back into the line of fire because you're afraid of being the bad guy. It's the survivor's guilt, the feeling that saving yourself is an act of cruelty. But I looked over at Zachary. He was sitting on a stool frosting a cake. It wasn't perfect, it was lopsided and blue, but it was his. I realized that breaking the chain didn't make me cruel, it made me free. Holding on to the guilt was the only thing keeping us connected, and I was done being the anchor for a sinking ship. I declined the call. Then I blocked the number. I walked over to the counter. "Ready for the grand opening?" I asked. Zachary grinned. "Yes, chef." We opened the doors to the warehouse. I had used the last of my savings to buy tables and chairs from a restaurant liquidation. I had posted a simple menu on social media. Real food made by the person who wrote the recipes. We sold out in an hour. The critic from the city paper came. She didn't write about drama or scandals. She wrote about the bread. She wrote that you could taste the integrity in the soup. I served a slice of the lopsided blue cake to Zachary at the end of the night. We sat on the loading dock, eating in silence, watching the stars. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I wasn't a sister. I was Grace. And for the first time in my life, my table was full. I stopped setting myself on fire to keep them warm. If you're the designated fixer in your family, hit that like button. It's time to hand in your resignation.